Okay. The push card in the problem. Try again. The push card in the problem slot suggests this has been a struggle for a bit, but not insurmountable. Okay. The in card in the short-term slot, short for intimacy, you need to let each other into each other's worlds. It's possible that you are not sharing with each other exactly what it is you would like to be doing in that situation. And the wet card is... Sorry, the wet card. Notice they're together. They're working together to do... Look, oh my God. You get it. This is Rose spoken. This whole reading has a theme of transformations. For example, I'm reading from an entirely different location. This is the very first drawing with this brand new deck of Sesamerot cards. And your problem has been defined here by the 9 of butterflies, a card about transformation. Of course, what I find interesting is that the transformation theme is in the problem slot. In the short-term solution slot, we see the 1 of teddy bears, often assigned in this position that we're to look out for number 1, ourselves. And the 15 of trucks speaks of strong drive or motivation. Perhaps that is why transformation is showing up in your problem slot. Transformation's a new coat of paint. It's a new sheet you put down and put some new stuff in the corner, for example. But the one thing you should never be compelled to change is who you truly are. Boldly dare to be yourself. The Sesamerot has spoken. I believe the 8 of bats transitioning into the 4 of goldfish is showing us what it is you're truly afraid of. You see, 8 bats are free to fly in any direction, but 4 goldfish can't go anywhere. They are wherever the bowl is put. Think of the 8 bats as 8 decisions that are up in the air. So long as they remain up in the air, you don't have to commit to anything. Each of those decisions can go in one of 2 different directions. That's why when the situation's resolved, we go to 4. So you see, it's not about finding a way, it's about choosing a way. The yellow rectangle in the long-term slot is basically the gold ingot that gets rendered down from these 4 solidified decisions. And it is a brick on your yellow brick road. Make those commitments and you will not only find your way, you will pave a path to it. The Sesamerot has spoken. Longtime followers of the Sesamerot will know that the 9 card actually belongs in the letters neighborhood and not the numbers neighborhood. And this may be the Sesamerot signaling to us there's something is not right about this situation. Which leads us to the zipper in the short-term solution slot. I believe this is the Sesamerot saying it's going to keep its trap shut. Now there's 2 ways we can interpret the empty card here at the long-term solution slot. The first may be the Sesamerot saying there is no good to answering this question. For if I was to say you lose, you would not try your best, and you would lose. And if I was to say you would win, you would not try your best, and you would lose. Or worst case scenario, I have spoiled the ending for everybody that was hoping to enjoy it. Indeed, says the Sesamerot, the answer would be hollow and empty for you. Or it could also be saying if you're trying to rope the Sesamerot into a sports bet, hey, you better put some cookies in this jar too. Sesamerot spoken. In honor of your 50 years upon this earth, I have shuffled the Sesamerot deck 50 times. You're welcome. Anyway, the full tableau of this reading is everybody seems to be having a little party and they all brought snacks. The problem slot party platter consists of the eggs. Now this can represent new beginnings and unfulfilled potential, but the fact that our short and long-term solution card are both treats that include eggs in their ingredient list, well, I think we're saying something here. Probably what you perceive as a midlife crisis on the rise is the clarion call of the universe inviting you to have this treat and eat it. So I don't know about a crisis, but these cards here are telling you that you're free to have a midlife whatever you want. In fact, now's a good time to have a midlife whatever you want because that means you'll live to be 100. So, Sesamerot has spoken. Happy birthday. In the numerology of Sesamatria, the number 19 signifies that this is not your first go-round with this issue. You've probably been dealing with it for a while. Also notice how the snowflakes fall short of expectation. You're expecting, you get different snowflakes, you're going to see different snowflakes, but no, it's all the same snowflake over and over again. This speaks of a pattern of frankly cold behavior that you should be able to recognize by now. Now, the one of duckies usually speaks of somebody in your life that serves a specific purpose. This one looks to your past, to what is a snowstorm, essentially, which, is not a good place for a duck to be. But I believe the Sesamerot's trying to tell us this fella has served his purpose, and is inviting you via the green oval to start a newer, more healthier cycle. The chucklehead blew it, and it's time for you to go off and do better. The Sesamerot has spoken. What an interesting question for this one to happen on. I mean, I've built my whole audience on remixing copyrighted characters for the entertainment purposes of telling fortunes. Then I get to answer a question about computers basically doing the same thing, and I get 3 simple shapes. Now, the blue square speaks of cold hard reality, which in this case I think represents capitalism. Because the stress point here isn't about making art, it's about having a career in it. But see, there's kind of an evolution thing going on here. You'll notice the colors get warmer. And we go from cold hard reality to exploring our own complexity to direct action. When we put it all together, I read it like this. When you break things down to basics, artists don't settle for the status quo. Because an artist doesn't desire what is. They wish to remold it into what it could be. The Sesamerot has spoken. I think right out of the gate, the hat in the problem card slot is challenging your motives. Religion is a 3-syllable word that means many things to many people, all of them very big things. But the thing is, some hats, like a hard hat or a rain hat or a sun hat, have a specific function. While others, like say a big purple pimp hat, they're really only there to make you look pretty. So first, be sure that you are sincere and that you are not pursuing a whole new form of belief simply based on the aesthetic. Now, the igloo card in the short-term slot shares a lot of symbolism with the hermit from traditional tarot, while the green rhombus talks about finding the right perspective on things. Seeking a new religion is about introspection and testing your own belief system. Religion is not what's in your head or even what's on it. It's what's inside. The Sesamerot has spoken. Alright, so notice the transformation between the problem and short-term solution slots. We got the one of teddy bears whose eyes become wide open when presented with the book. Meanwhile, in the long-term solution slot, we got the 18 of carrots, 18 being the number at which we recognize when someone is an adult. So on its surface, we're seeing how when we understand that we are adults, we grow away from childish things. But see, here's the thing. Chores are a thing you give your kids to do. I mean, my mom used to always give me chores all the time. Giving chores is what a mom does. However, I very much imply from this query that what you're looking for your partner to do is more adult responsibilities around the house. Your partner isn't scrounging around for allowance money to go get wax lips and garbage pail kids. These are adult responsibilities. So setting your partner key to that is probably the first step. The Sesamerot has spoken. The pull card in the problem slot often represents a situation where you feel like you're the one doing all the work. And that's the way you feel about it. You feel like you're working so hard to be understood, to have your perspective understood. Now, here's an interesting fact you might not have known about the 9 card. It is not, in fact, a numbers card. It is a letters card. However, considering the card is being presented by a character you associate with numbers who is holding up a number, some confusion is understandable, yes? So how can we address this? Well, one way might be to come out of that perspective just long enough to look at it from the outside and see if you're actually sending the message that you think you are. I mean, for all you know, your mom could be looking at the 6 of Enons. And you'll only be able to help them spot that discrepancy if you come outside of your own perspective long enough to help them. The Sesamerot has spoken. There is a perfect transformation going on here between the eggs card in the problem slot and the sandwich card in the long-term solution. I believe that this is a tableau constructed by the Sesamerot to show you what it is that other people see when you act all crabby and grumpy. You see, eggs are an offering that have a lot of potential. There's so many things you can make out of eggs. But if you're all grouchy, then it's going to make your offering look like a sandwich being handed to you by a fuzzy guy in a trash can. However, keep in mind a couple of interesting facts. First of all, Bert and Ernie are actually friends. So you wouldn't want this sort of misinformation to happen to somebody whose opinion you actually care about. Conversely, Oscar prefers to be alone and doesn't really care what Bert thinks. So really it comes down to desire. If you want more Ernies in your life, don't act like such an Oscar. The Sesamerot has spoken. Like many things related to the gobbledygooker, this reading makes more sense if you look at it backwards. The rhombus is the Sesamerot's go-to symbol for perspective, and the orange rhombus, as opposed to the green rhombus, typically means sort of a skewed or flawed perspective. Now, obviously, the eggs card has a connection to the gobbledygooker, but keep in mind that the eggs card also represents things like potential, the unknown, things of that nature. So basically, somebody with a crazy, weird way of looking at things decided to book a little surprise for people. Meanwhile, the rest of us saw the giant egg and came up with a story in our own head about what it could be all about. And of course, we were disappointed when what happened didn't match what was in our head. But at the end of the day, I guess we can all agree, if you break a bad egg, you're just going to get a bad omelet. The Sesamerot has spoken. Notice how the Ten of Fruits is showing like a whole bunch of different fruits. It's not showing the same thing. I believe this is the Sesamerot indicating to you that you're looking at this in a different way than you probably should be. Think of it this way. If you want to play with a kite, you're going to take it outside on a windy day, right? You're not going to take it over to the roller skating rink and play with it in the middle of the night. Similarly, if you're going to ask a girl out on a date, you're not going to ask her to accompany you to the lunchroom or to math class. Presumably, you're going to take her to a place that's been specially prepared to go on dates and to hang out and stuff like that. That's going to be in other places outside of school. So if that's your only reason for not asking her out, hey, that's bananas. Take her someplace with more appeal. The Sesamerot has spoken. The Eight of Bats often represents something spooky, and when it's in the problem slot, that could very well mean that the sense of spookiness is not unfounded. Especially when we consider the one of duckies. Keep in mind that a ducky is a friend that we bring with us for a very specific purpose. And often it describes a utilitarian relationship, which is why it concerns me that this one of duckies is looking back at those Eight of Bats and smiling. Alternately, it could reflect on how this friend of yours sees you as the utilitarian person. You see the scariness and are not looking where you're going, and there's a trap in front of you. In short, if this person is not passing the vibe check and you do not feel safe enough to address it, then trust your instincts. Refuse to be gaslit by plausible deniability. The Sesamerot has spoken. Soccer balls are comprised of white hexagons and black pentagons, which in the Sesamerot symbolism represents the entirety of life and all of its mysteries. And notice in this picture that we're focusing on one hexagon specifically. Probably a sign that you're focusing on one single bean and not the whole enchilada. In the short-term slot, the lemonade stand reminds us that everybody's got to start somewhere. And really, the only way to have the proper skill set is to go get the skill set. Experience is probably one of the best teachers out there. Finally, the red triangle in the long-term slot is a sign of passionate thought, but it's also a sign of fire. And to really nail the point, it's an arrow pointing upwards. A journey of 1,000 steps can never happen unless you take the most important step, the first one. The Sesamerot has spoken. I believe the same card in the problem slot over here is pointing out a problem with the question itself. You are treating astrophysics as if it is something that is the opposite of realistic, when in fact both of those things actually exist, realism and astrophysics. Now, a soccer ball is comprised of black pentagons and white hexagons, and in the Sesamerot that symbolizes sort of the entirety of all reality. You speak of reaching for the stars, and yet the Earth itself revolves around a star. And the zipper in the long-term solution slot is inviting you to take these two concepts that you think are two different things and zip them together. Remember, your passions are often guiding you towards what it is you are meant to do in this life. The Earth is another celestial body among millions. Even if you're down to Earth, you are still among the stars. The Sesamerot has spoken. The ladder card here in the problem slot tells us that you have not yet begun to climb the rungs of silliness. Now notice Rosita pushing the big snowball in the push card. Remind you of somebody? I would say it reminds me of Sisyphus. Also a reminder that your efforts should not be thought of as vertical, i.e. trying to get to the top of something, but rather a more horizontal effort, i.e. maintaining a consistent pace forever. All day, every day, 7 days a week, silliness should be your daily bread. Or porridge, I suppose. Look, if the world didn't need silly, it wouldn't have made silly people like me and you as well, I suppose. So good luck to you in your continued efforts to be silly. I am going to now drink this hot sauce for no reason whatsoever. This doesn't matter. Spoken. Why'd I do that? All right, so this is an interesting message being sent by the Sesamerot right now. Here is you in the present, and the problem is that you're sort of envisioning this perfect meal of 7 cookies that you can make from these eggs. And you've got this perfect vision in your head of what she provides, all of the other ingredients that makes the sweet, wonderful cookies. You're focused on one tiny aspect, the sweet, delicious dessert of the situation, and not considering the whole meal. You have literally turned your back on it. When we fantasize about others in this way, we don't think about the little things, like the numerous arguments, or the cleaning up their barf. In short, what it is that you can't shake is this idealized fantasy. It just so happens that you've put her name and face on these cookies. So your first step is to depersonify this fantasy, and the rest should fall into place. The Sesamerot has spoken. So the X-ray is a diagnostic tool to look inside and see if anything's wrong. I believe this is in the problem slot because you're being instructed not to do that. Parenting is, after all, a big responsibility, but it is the responsibility of the parents. You as an uncle have sort of the privilege to be off to the side. With that said, to be the best uncle, well, that's also pretty simple. Just stay nearby. That means being available, of course, but enthusiastically available. See, look at that big smile Elmo has. Be there with a big smile. As for everything else, well, we're looking at the night card in the long-term slot, which is the equivalent of the star, which sort of means looking up and looking out for signs from the parents. Because really, if you're going to be taking guidance from anybody goofing with Muppets merchandise, it should definitely be your nephew's parents. The Sesamerot has spoken.